So these studies show us that perhaps the Reid technique is not as effective as we might have hoped. However, we also have to consider why exactly people are using it and why it creates these false confessions. The main thing is the psychological coercion. Police officers are an authority figure, especially to law abiding citizens, and are even dressed in uniform so that they are identifiable as such. People are likely to follow their orders, especially, again, law abiding citizens, so perhaps this plays a role in why innocent people may confess. Also, the denial of resources and falsified evidence definitely plays a role. Being denied of basic resources can definitely mess with a person's headspace, and being presented with falsified evidence might make it seem like the only good option is to confess, even if you know you didn't do it. The Reid technique has been dismissed by multiple police organizations throughout the country. However, the Reid Association still exists and promotes its classes to police officers. Also, the Reid technique has not been outlawed in any country, and police officers in most places in the United States are still allowed to lie to suspects. So, how can we go about fixing this problem? We need to recognize human error and implement a better system of hierarchy and monitoring within the police force so that everyone is held accountable. We can also outlaw the Reid technique completely. And on an individual level, there's really not much that a suspect can do but know their Miranda rights and simply refuse to speak when presented with someone using the Reid technique. However, this is very difficult to do when dealing with most police officers who think that you are guilty of a crime because they are probably just not going to present you with your rights, or they will find loopholes within the justice system. So on an individual level, it doesn't seem like there's much to do. We need to go higher within the system and look at higher levels of authority in order to fix this. There is also an alternate method called the High Value Detainee Interrogation Group. Its acronym is HIG. This essentially gets suspects to talk until they contradict themselves and prove their own guilt. Usually they're in group settings and in comfortable settings such as a hotel room or even a restaurant, and this technique is used currently by government agencies like the FBI and the CIA. So let's do a deep dive into HIG. What's important to note is that HIG is a form of interrogation methodology. However, it also stands for a governmental research group which studies behavioral science and social science in order to find the best information gathering approaches. So the government and scientists alike have been studying HIG techniques and refining their training programs, and they took a sample of 69 interrogations from 51 different investigators and did essentially a meta-analysis of HIG. They did pre- and post-training interviews with the investigators, and what they found is that those who had been trained in HIG found an increase in information disclosure and rapport with their suspect, so they were able to get more information out of a suspect and have a better relationship with the suspect. They also decreased their investigator talking time and increased their active listening skills, which is essentially the main point of using HIG, is to get the suspect to talk as much as possible and then find flaws within their statements if they are lying. And increasing the active listening skills just means that the investigator is better able to listen to what the suspect is saying and interpret what they say. And this highlights the key difference between HIG and the Reid technique. The Reid technique aims for interrogators talking the majority of the time, developing theories in which the suspect is guilty until they finally confess. HIG involves the interrogator talking as little as possible so that the suspect eventually contradicts themselves and proves their own guilt. While most of the work on HIG research is not classified by the government, it is somewhat difficult to find, and unless you have access to government agencies' research, you're not really going to find much on it. However, they have been developing this for about 10 years now, and it is used in counterterrorism investigations by the CIA, the FBI, the Air Force, etc. And while this doesn't necessarily mean that HIG works, we can look at the past and see where the government has made mistakes in its interrogation techniques. It is potentially a new way of interrogating that is more effective than the Reid technique, and it's worth taking a look at. So, in conclusion, on the individual level, besides being aware of your rights, probably the most important thing that you can do is advocate for places like the Innocence Project and educate yourself on the problem of false confessions via the Reid technique. Also, advocating against the use of the technique altogether can help improve the criminal justice system as a whole in getting correct information during interrogations. As psychology progresses, so too should the criminal justice system and its understanding of psychology. Outdated techniques should be left in the past, and the Reid technique is one of these.